my screen. Thank you for starting the recording. All right, I'm assuming everybody can see my screen. Okay, great, awesome, thanks. All right, welcome everybody to our November SRAC meeting. I can't believe we're here already, but I'm so excited that we're here and we have great discussions to be had today, and it's super exciting. So thanks so much for making time to join us. I will get us going. Obviously, our housekeeping things, closed captions are available should you need them. As mentioned earlier, if you are speaking, please unmute yourself. And if you're not, please mute in order to not have background noise throughout the meeting. If you're an SRAC member, we'd love for you to try to keep your camera on throughout the meeting. And if you're a member of the public, please stop your video for the duration of our meeting. You can use the grid view to see who is all present at this meeting. If you need to rename yourself or interact in nonverbal, using the nonverbal icons there available for you. I also mentioned earlier that because we have a pretty packed meeting agenda, feel free to access the chat window to pose any questions. We may not be able to get to all of them, but we will definitely do so in the meeting minutes and when we follow up. Let's get into it. Will, I'm going to hand it off to you to do roll call before I share ODOT staff and our lovely facilitators who are here. So I'll pass it off to you, and folks can say here if you're here.
Randall? Not hearing that.
Here.
Ali.
Oh, she's
Gagharty?
here. Nope, she's here.
Nope. Ali Gagharty?
Yeah, hi.
Great.
All right, perfect. Brock Didis?
I am here.
Dana Nichols? Danny Schultz?
Here.
Jessica Kreiser? Not hearing that. Josh Kubu?
Here.
Kim Cabtree? Lonnie Radke? Matt Jensen?
I'm here.
Mavis Hartz? Michael Curing?
Your sound
Noah
cut out
here.
for a second. Was that Naomi you asked for?
Yep.
Yeah, she'll be here after class around 3. Yeah.
Okay. Rob Einerfeld?
Hi, I'm here.
And Will Anderson's here as well.
Awesome. Matt's here. Great. Perfect. I saw that Mavis just joined in the waiting room. So Mavis is also here.
Okay, we are at quorum.
And Kim is also here just for the record. So.
Great. Kim. Hi, Kim. Perfect. Awesome. So glad to see everyone here. Well, I'll just share real quick. So I'm Zal Posadas, she, her pronouns. I am the Safe Routes to School Construction Program Manager that helps to staff this advisory committee. I will just name off our lovely ODOT folks and our consultants. And if y'all turn your cameras on and wave, that would be lovely. So we have Heidi Manlove here, our Safe Routes Education Program Manager. We have, let's see, who else is here? We have Andrea Durbin here. We have Suzanne Carlson, our administrator, here as well. Leanne Ferguson is here. Who else is here? Our lovely Chris Swatchy, our lovely facilitator, is here. Roberto Cotto, our Safe Routes analyst, is here. Hannah Capel is also here, one of our additional facilitators. Great. Jackie Carlisle is here as well, supporting Safe Routes. Hoping that I don't miss anyone. Going through the list real quick. Great. We have a stacked group of folks here. So Tracy Pearl is also here, our TSO manager. Great. Perfect. Great. Well, moving us along, Chris, I will hand it off to you to talk about our overview of today's meeting.
Okay, thank you. So welcome everyone. I wanted to just highlight, this is the fourth recommendation process for Safe Routes to School infrastructure over the years. And just to set the tone, actually, I was thinking about setting the table because we know what's coming up in a week. And I thought we could set the meeting table by just taking a moment to think about where we are and what's going to be on the table. So if we think about all the communities that have submitted application and the time and thoughtfulness that has gone into that from the communities, from the communities that have action plans, maybe they had assistance from the Safe Routes to School program to develop that, to the engineers, to the planners from cities, counties, transit, tribal, other road authorities to get these applications submitted. And then it kicks into ODOT. So all the ODOT eligibility review, the time that the thoughtfulness that it takes to review the applications, to do the ground review, as well as scoring the applications, which the SRAC spent a lot of time developing the scoring criteria and the lenses, to developing the 100%, the 150%, the scenarios, to some of the considerations. Are there applications that might take less in order to fund more applications, and the time that's allowed in that, as well as the homework. And then after today's meeting, if the committee does come to a recommendation, the work that goes into preparing the recommendation for the Oregon Transportation Commission in January of next year to the SRAC, who has really put so much work in this entire year, looking at the scoring criteria, reviewing the lenses, having the deliberation and the discussions, the homework, the amount of hours it takes to review the homework, to give input back for staff to create possible additional scenarios. So I say that just to set the table for this meeting, and out of the respect for everything that's come to your plate. I'm really milking this metaphor. But really with the idea that there is the transparency, the thoughtfulness, and the sincerity of this program, all under the charge for the SRAC to make the recommendation to OTC and to get projects out the door and funded for Safe Routes to School. So there is a little overview of milking a metaphor, and I'd like to do a quick overview of the agenda. So could we start with start sharing screen, please? And we'll look at the overview.
Okay, great. Am I sharing?
Not yet.
Not yet?
I can still milk the metaphor.
I saw the screen share.
Okay, let's see what I was sharing.
There we go.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
So we have, as we do in all SRAC meetings, we have the beginning of public comment, and we do have some public comment today. And if there's anyone else who would like to make public comment, now is the time to put it into the chat. We have a period of SRAC business where we will be going through some announcements. We have PTD staff here to give some updates, as well as a legislative update. We have the SRAC committee reports. There's no rapid response report, but there is a technical work group report. And then we will ask for your approval of 2 sets of minutes from the SRAC, the July and the September. We then are going to move into the heart of the meeting, which is review of the construction projects, the scenarios, the input, the comments received, and the questions from the SRAC, leading into your deliberation and discussion for recommendation to the Oregon Transportation Commission for this 4th round of infrastructure funding. We'll then turn our attention to the 2025 meeting schedule, and then as we do at all meetings, wrap up with the SRAC member check-in, assuming that there's time. I did want to, before we launch, just a little congratulations and announcement. Do you want to share what Michael shared, Zhao?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, he hasn't shared with a larger SRAG, and so hopefully I'm not stealing his
Oh,
thunder. But he shared earlier that he and his partner just had a baby this past weekend, so he is not here today because of that, and so just wanting to send some love his way. Yeah, I just wanted to share that.
More SREC babies.
More
Good.
SRAG baby.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, let's move into public comment. And again, there's 3 minutes for public comment. And Roberto, we do have, I'm not sure if Mr. Charles is here. If he is not, he has submitted public comment about a project up in Portland, and we will follow up with him and connect him with Noel. So it is a project within the metro region and not a project currently for your consideration. I'm not seeing any additional public comment, Roberto.
That's correct. I don't see any hands or anything in the chat room that would let us know that there's public comment.
Yep.
Folks who have submitted public comment through email will be posting those online and also providing out to SREC for review.
Okay. So with that, I think we're going to turn it over to Andrea Durbin.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Andrea Durbin, the Policy and Strategic Investments Manager in the Public Transportation Division. It's great to be here. I wanted to share a quick update on some of the work that we're doing with our advisory committees. First of all, I wanted to thank all of those of you that responded to our survey. We did a survey of all of our advisory committee members recently to just get a sense of how people's experience has been and better understand ways in which we can improve your experience and improve how the advisory committees are operating. The Public Transportation Division is responsible for 4 advisory committees with the Safe Routes to School, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the Public Transit Advisory Committee, and also our Rail Committee. So we have 4 committees that we're also looking at how do we better kind of align and coordinate amongst them and really do some more shared learning across the committees. This is in the context of a broader review that ODOT is doing. ODOT has over 50 advisory committees. So right now there's a process underway to look at how do we better align and improve how these advisory committees function. So some of the input that we received that I wanted to just let you know to kind of expect more information and support coming. One is we're going to be developing some clear materials, particularly for new advisory committee members on each of these committees to kind of better orient you and have a more formal onboarding process. It's been kind of some receive it, some don't. So we want to make sure there's more consistency across our advisory committees. We're also looking at how to share materials and provide better access. Actually, this committee provides a really good model for that with your access to your Google Drive. So we're going to really build on that example and provide that support for our other advisory committees. So advisory committees can better access modal plans and information that they need to kind of better prepare for these meetings and provide informed input and advice to ODOT as we do the work. And then we're also looking at how the timing for advisory committees. So we're looking at synchronizing our committees. Our committees have different schedules, and looking at shifting next year for committees to move to 4 meetings a year or additional meetings as needed, and really building kind of work plans and priorities around those meetings that are kind of timed with the pace and timeline of the work that each committee has to kind of tackle and address. So it won't be the same time for all the committees, but same month for all the committees, but it'll be more consistent to the work focus of the committees. So yeah, I really just wanted to appreciate everybody for your input and let you know that we are working on integrating that input and addressing and responding to the suggestions and trying to make improvements moving forward so that your experience is as positive as possible and these committees are as you're feeling you're making kind of the contributions and aligning with the work. And so I was also want to introduce, we have a new staff person that we wanted to introduce you all to, and who is going to be coordinating our work around the legislative session, given the next session is going to be a big one on the transportation related issues. We have Rem Nivens, who has joined us, who is going to be helping us coordinate for the Public Transportation Division on preparing for the session, providing input to the work groups, and making sure that we are as responsive as possible to legislator needs. So I wanted to take a moment to introduce him to this group as well. And I think we'll have shift to, I don't know, Rem, if you're on camera or not, I don't see everybody, but
Yeah,
want to make, okay, great, good. So Rem brings years of experience working in the legislative space, working for agencies in the Oregon government, state government, also the governor's office in the past. So we've been really grateful for his addition, joining the ODOT team. He's been able to jump in really quickly and help us coordinate and make sure that we're taking advantage of the moment and making sure that we're as responsive as possible. So wanted to make sure everyone on this committee saw his face, and you'll be seeing us more as we head into the legislative session next year.
nice to meet everybody.
Look forward to getting updates from you, Rem. Thank you. I'm going to back up, and Zhao, I think you have a few announcements as well.
Yeah, just the one. Thanks. So with Noelle Melkaberry stepping down as our chair, as she's has wrapped up her term as the SRAC chair, Will is stepping into the chair role, and his first action will be to solicit incoming chair nominations from the advisory committee. And so he'll be sending out an email in the next couple of days here. So just wanted to flag that y'all are able to share nominations. We also in the email are sharing, folks who have served in these officer roles in the past. So for when you nominate, you can also nominate yourself if you like to, if you have interest in the incoming chair position. So just wanted to flag that so that when y'all do respond, please respond to me and Will directly. And there'll be more directions in the email, but just wanted to flag that so that you're aware of like, what is this when it comes through. Thanks.
And just is there an Oregon Community Pass quick update?
No, I think we can move past. Oregon Community Pass is the open for applications for folks who have filled out a pre-application, and so we're sharing for transparency that process is moving forward, but SRAC doesn't have input on those applications, and so we didn't want to spend too much time sharing about that, but it's exciting. They're moving forward.
Great. I think we can move now to Suzanne Carlson to give a legislative update.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Suzanne Carlson, Public Transportation Division Administrator. As you all will certainly recall, or at least those who've been around a little while, ODOT has a core package of requests that we're putting forward for to the legislature next year. And legislators and with ODOT staff support have been going around the state over the last many months. I think there were 9 or 10 or 12 stops talking about some of these needs. So hopefully you've heard about these. Hopefully we've done our job to socialize some of the needs. It's a lot around filling in for state highway fund dollars shrinking. Gas tax is just not going as far as it used to. It's not keeping up with inflation. Costs are more expensive, and so forth. So I won't bore you out with the details. That's not what I'm here to talk about. But just to say, like, that's our core need, is we are going to be looking at significant staff layoffs, inability to pave, to plow snow, that type of thing, without some of these core services. In addition, we have a whole bunch of safety stuff in there. So there's 250 million-ish that really speaks to multimodal safety, safe routes to school, on-road bicycle and pedestrian investments, and some other really fantastic programs. So as you heard in that, now you hear yourselves, right? Safe routes to school. It's in the package. We have put in for a $35 million ask in there to be able to kind of keep up with the demand that we've seen through our competitive grant solicitations for Safe Routes to School. So I know those of you who are around signed on to a support letter for that ask. I just want to set the context a little bit first to say that like we did those statewide tours, they went really well. Probably some of you came out and testified, which is great. Heard a lot of support for those sort of multimodal investments, heard a lot for Safe Routes to School in particular. I think it's a really popular program and just really resonates in communities, and people have seen the benefits in communities that got these investments. Heard a lot about specific bike trails in some communities, a lot around transit. I think transit folks really came out and showed a lot of support across the state for transit. So we really heard some good stuff. And as far as our position from the Public Transportation Division, feeling kind of optimistic that message carried forward. That said, it's really legislatively driven. They was staffed by them. ODOT's really there to provide that information, to identify what our needs are, and to say that, hey, if you want to do this program, this is the information and these are the needs. So as we kind of transition into next legislative session, well, interim, right now, there's a work group. Let me update on that first. So there's 3 work groups happening right now. I don't think I'm a member. I think I just have to present consistently at the Public and Active Transportation Work Group, which is work group number 2. I believe Rob is on there. Who else? Maybe that's it from this group. In any event, so we've been asked to present on transit, on funding resources, of how things do get funded, how things could be funded, what the needs are. We've talked a little bit about Safe Routes to School. And December 3rd, we will be speaking at length about Safe Route to School. We'll be going into a little more detail on that $35 million ask. And we'll also be going into some more detail around the $115 million ask for on-road bicycle and pedestrian network investments. There's also quite a bit in there that sounds like it's maintenance and preservation, but is really safety investments for all transportation users, but specifically for vulnerable users on roadways. So making some of those safety and intersection. I was trying not to say infrastructure, intersection improvements. So doing some of those really tactical investments that would improve safety for especially vulnerable users. So there's really a lot on the table. There's a lot of information that we've shared, and hopefully some of you have been able to keep up with that. The meetings are all live streamed. You can't necessarily join as you join this meeting, but you can certainly stream them, and they are all in the Oregon legislative system. The recordings are in there, so you can sort of back up and cover all that. The other 2 work groups are on back to basics maintenance and preservation, and also on finishing 2017 priority commitments. The work groups are all somewhat similar, and they have pretty similar representation. There's like 2 of everybody on everything. So like transit's got 2 people on each. I think bicycle and pedestrian groups have 2 people on each work group. I'm not sure of all the specifics of Trucking Association, et cetera. So there's pretty good representation into each work group on their different topic areas. So on December 3rd, as I mentioned, we'll be sharing a lot of really good information. So that'll be a great one to follow and join. Once we get through all of those presentations, the facilitators of those groups have really wanted to come out of those with specific needs and concepts to go into the legislative session. And so the elected officials will really be taking that message forward and coming up with what they think the solution set is and what they think are the high priority needs. So in terms of being an advisory group, ODOT is reports to the governor. Essentially, we're executive branch, and Safe Routes School Advisory Committee serves to advise ODOT. So essentially, it's kind of up under the governor. So we definitely appreciate the support and the letter supporting ODOT's budget. This package that I've been talking about is part of our agency recommended budget. Right now, we're waiting for the governor to announce her budget, and then ODOT will pivot to supporting what the governor has introduced as the budget, because we're really an agency under the direction of the governor. So at that time, I think as you can all, as individuals, or certainly feel free to participate in that legislative process as individuals, to go testify and say, hey, my idea is this, I support this, I don't support that. You can say that you're part of the Safe Routes School Advisory Committee in terms of your bio. That's who you are. This is a good part of your resume and credentials. But in terms of representing this group, you would need to get approval from this body and be representing a position that's an established position of ODOT and this body. So we as ODOT don't really take positions on bills. We are responding all the time. We're very much front and center and participating, but we're not coming out and saying like, we've got to have project X, or we've got to have this component of the bill, or it's not going to pass. We just say, if you were to do that, this would be the result. This is how we would support that. This is how we would have to staff up to do that work. So it's really the role of the legislature to be making some of these decisions going forward. So let me just check my talking points. That's kind of what I wanted to cover, and just make sure everyone had a good grounding in kind of our roles and responsibilities, and how ODOT plays, and then how you guys can advise and support us through that. I did miss one part, which is that Representative Nguyen has a work group as well on e-mobility that has been meeting over the summer. So they've also expressed some interest and gathered a lot of information from us, especially Amanda Howell on our staff, who's probably not here today, but has been really able to inform them with how other states do safety for e-micromobility, and they may be coming forward with some legislative concepts as well. So there's probably just a few different areas that'll be coming forward there. I think it is, I don't know exactly what date, but it'll be in December when that governor's budget comes out, and we can certainly share more around that. Excuse me, my phone's ringing. And we were looking at your meeting schedule. It looks like you meet in March and then not again until May. So probably March, there'll be a lot happening. We can certainly show up and provide these kind of updates and say what we're hearing and what's kind of moving forward and what kind of inquiries we're getting as ODOT. And then when we meet in May, things will probably be pretty well wrapped in terms of the bills will need to have moved forward. They'll be working their way through committee, and there's probably not going to be as much interaction at that point. But we can continue to provide these kind of updates as we go forward.
I think we have time for a couple quick questions. I see, Will, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Kristen. And thank you for the report, Suzanne. A quick question about the micromobility study or work group. I know that Rep. Levy has introduced a bill on e-bike safety before, and it looks like she and Rep. Nguyen are working together on this one. I haven't actually tracked this work group, but is it looking at e-bikes specifically, or is it other forms of micromobility? And I guess how is it building off of Rep. Levy's first bill?
It's all forms of micromobility, so skateboards, scooters, etc. And I don't know that I can speak to that. I believe that Rep. Levy was involved as well.
Okay, thank you.
Rob?
One of the things that's important about a transportation bill, well, first of all, thank you for the update, Susan. That was great. One of the things that's interesting about transportation, it's a very bipartisan issue, and that's usually, how it moves forward and everywhere. And so I just want to encourage people to, as individuals, not representing yourselves as members of this committee, to reach out to your legislators, let them, if you have a specific Safe Routes to School project that's been built in your community that you want to, either that you need or that you can show them that how important, how impactful it's been. Definitely want to encourage people to do that, especially if you live in a small town or rural community. So just wanted to share that thought. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I know I took up a lot of bandwidth, but we also have Kali Sullivan, who is with our Government Affairs Office. So if there's anything you wanted to add quickly, Kali, or anything to clarify.
Thanks, Suzanne. Hi, everyone. Suzanne, you covered everything. I just wanted to jump in with a little more information on the e-micromobility piece. I sat on that work group with Amanda. Amanda did a great job providing a lot of technical information for them. So I just wanted to add that the work group was informal since the work group bill last session didn't pass, but they did get permission from leadership to convene the group regardless, since it was an important topic. And the group really narrowed in on a focus of streamlining regulations, since the definition of e-micromobility doesn't exist in Oregon statute. And they also had a lot of interest in a safety education campaign for e-mobility devices in Oregon. So we're not sure how the legislation will really turn out, but we know that's where the work group was really focusing in on. We expect a concept to come out of it. So I just want to provide that context. Thanks, Suzanne.
Excellent. Thank you. I believe we have a slide that has some resources on it for where folks can go.
Do you see the slide?
Mm-hmm. Sure
Yeah.
can. So this is the session timeline, where to track bills. Thank you for the overview of ODOT's role during this session. And then I think not only Suzanne and Kali, but also Rob. Thank you for your support message. So any final questions? We're right on time. So if there's
Could
no,
I just say in the chat, I shared a website, and that's the website for the Joint Committee on Transportation, including in particular those subcommittees that Suzanne was referring to. So if people want to go watch the meetings or see the information, the presentations that were provided, that's where you can find them.
excellent. And we'll include that in the notes as well. Thank you. All right. So our last piece of SRAC business is approval of the July and September notes. And because the committee first tries to reach consensus, we use this model. And just as a side note, if after quite a bit of deliberation we cannot reach consensus, we do move to a voting structure. But I'm fully supportive of the decision or choice. While I may not be fully supportive of the decision or choice, I can live with it and I won't oppose it. I oppose the decision or choice and I need more discussion. So if we can stop screen sharing and if we could do July 1st and then September, if the committee approves the notes. Let's start with July. So thumbs up from Mavis, Matt, Josh, Ollie, thank you, Dana, Kim. All right, excellent, thank you. All right, and now may we move to September? Are there any discussions about September or?
Should we abstain if we weren't there?
I would say if you weren't there, it'd be probably hard to weigh in on the notes unless.
Yeah, that's right. So now you know why I'm not voting. So.
Okay, thank you. All right. May I see digits? Thank you. Dana. Oh.
I wasn't there either.
Oh, I'm sorry. I knew that. Okay. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. All right. So we are ready to move on to our main discussion.
All right, let's get into it. Like I shared at the beginning of the meeting, I am excited that we are here. This is one of the main charges of SRAC is to help us with project recommendations. So I'm excited that we get to be here. I'm going to frame up the where we're at, how we got here, similar to last meeting before we jump into our discussion, just to be able to frame up the committee to be able to have a good discussion. And so where we're at in our timeline is that the purpose of our program is to be able to get funding out the door so that projects can get built and get delivered. And so getting a recommendation from the advisory committee today is crucial and critical for us to be able to do that, as we are only have a handful of days in between the holiday to get this project list submitted to the Oregon Transportation Commission in early December in order for them to give us their final stamp of approval as they're the deciding body for the construction project list at their January meeting. So we did update this interactive dashboard that we presented at our last meeting in September with an additional scenario that I had emailed out last week. And so I think, yeah, thanks, Roberto, just put it in the chat for y'all to be able to see, be able to play around with, all the different comparisons of each scenario. I won't walk us through that since we did that in the last round, but please feel free to put in the chat if you have any questions regarding how to navigate this website. And so staff have put in, as Chris mentioned earlier, we put in a lot of hours and time to get y'all the best information that we could in terms of a project list for y'all to review if we would recommend. And so in getting there, we looked at utilizing the guiding principles, incorporating these values that y'all had set, all centered around racial equity that is inclusive of all of these components here, ranging from, safety and health, geographic balance, and everything in between that we see here. And then we also obviously filter it through the approved scoring matrix that y'all had set in the last year. really highly prioritizing the transportation disparity factors, followed by crashes factors, pretty evenly, as well as the different elementary and middle schools, relationship to schools, and project readiness. And so really focusing on projects that are, have the most need and are the most ready to be built. We've also gone through an eligibility review, and so staff really making sure that the solution being proposed matches the problem that's being stated in these applications, making sure that there is a reasonable budget, and that it is truly a pedestrian bicyclist project. And so in all of that process, where are we now? We are at the point where we're right at the end of the finish line of making a recommendation on behalf of the advisory committee. Excuse me. And so there's, as you can see, a lot of work that's gone into it. If you want to see exactly like all the details of, like what have staff done, we had put it in the homework that y'all received last month. Detailing from like the scoring matrix and what we've asked regional staff versus ODOT headquarters staff to do. And so if you're interested in that process or have additional questions, please let us know. Happy to share more about that. So once we've gone through that staff review for priority scoring and eligibility review, we created scenarios based on these optional lenses that were set previously. I wanted to note here that we did not apply the new and persistent applicants lens because when we did, it didn't change much of scenario 2 or 2.5. If we did add in that scenario, it would look very similar to scenario 2 or 2.5. And so if there's any question of like, why didn't we apply that one? That's the reason why. Great, so we finally sent y'all the homework with all the scenarios, and in that we asked you to consider which scenario you thought would be best, that would best represent the intent of the Safe Routes construction program, and to reach out early to us if you would like to ask any of the applicants to consider a potential scope reduction. We did request that you not change application scores or lobby or reference specific projects that you wanted removed or added. Definitely especially when they're outside of the approved optional lens. And so if the lens can apply to all of them, we ask that you not pick and choose those specific projects, even though we know that they're all really great projects. And so from that homework, the overall summary that we got was that about 11 of y'all supported scenario 2, 3, we had one member support scenario 3. We had 2 that were unsure of which scenario they wanted to support and wanted more discussion and provided more context on that. And 1 person that was interested in scenario 1 and recommending that one. And so how we addressed these comments and support for each scenario. In scenario 1, there was a concern that the application of lenses would not award a top scoring application that demonstrated high need for its community, and that the applied lenses would have minimal change on the overall list of projects. And so wanted to highlight here that a lot of the change happens at the cut line, right? We have a $3 million lens that is the only optional lens that does apply across the board. And we've used that for every round. So we applied that for consistency this time around. But for other projects at the cut line, the additional scenarios would provide additional projects that potentially could be fully funded. And we also saw that the other scenarios did provide, did better reflect the geographic balance that we know SRAC prioritizes. And so seeing that the other scenarios would better achieve that. And so we've met with folks who provided like concerns and questions or felt that they were unsure. And so this so what we're showing today is how we've addressed that. And so like I said, we got a lot of support for scenario 2, a lot of it ranging from cost effectiveness and geographic balance, and really wanting to make sure that we do implement those lenses, that they're really important, making sure that our impact is spread out as wide as possible, that, it spreads the money out to more communities, especially smaller communities, which is why we apply that cost-effective lens for smaller projects. It looks to be the most fair. It seems to be the most equitable. And folks prefer to fund more projects and use the total amount available. Some folks like the additional lens allows us to fund more projects. And more money spent, money out the door, geographic balance, and seems the best at providing funding to qualifying projects and to the number of applicants. And then the support for scenario 3, there was support for 2 specific projects in the scenario, and the member did note that they're aware that members are not supposed to lobby for specific projects, but I just wanted to mention that they supported this scenario. And then there was also a comment that came in a little bit later about wanting to adjust scenario 3 to spend out, all of the funds to not leave any money on the table and to try to fund higher projects if possible. And so by requesting a reduction from 3 projects in order to spend out all the funds. And so we wanted to highlight this for a potential discussion today, since that wasn't included in our initial scenario 3. And so we can get there when we get to the discussion, if y'all would like to review that and discuss a little bit more. We also got some questions around, like conflict of interest, feeling like, do we need to recuse? So super appreciate the transparency. We always recommend that, like, if you're unsure, please note or ask. We'll go over it more when we get to the recommendation portion of the meeting, but unless you're directly, solely benefiting from these funds, you shouldn't have to recuse your vote. But Chris will walk us through that later. There was also a couple of comments of, when we would review the next scoring matrix for the next round. We call it our off solicitation year, right? 2025, we will not be in a solicitation year. And so that's when we will be reviewing like selection criteria. We'll also be reviewing lenses and discussing to see, are we actually getting to, are they helping us get to where we want to go and to be able to fund the types of projects and the number of projects that we're wanting to. And so we will discuss all of that in the next year with all of the lenses. Another question was, if we cap the maximum limit per agency, so this is the $3 million per jurisdiction lens, should we allow the agency to choose which part or which project to fund or consider for partial funding? And this is speaking to agencies, who submit multiple applications. And so we do ask that applicants rank their projects when they submit multiple applications. Staff did propose in our scenario to prioritize the applications that scored higher, but we considered the applicant rankings, we considered SRAC input in that as well. We also reached out to applicants again for additional consideration. And in those conversations, one applicant, City of Eugene, did rescind a project that they had ranked higher initially in order to request that their other projects be fully funded. And so because of that prompted staff to create a scenario 2.5 that I had emailed out last week, as the rescinded project allowed for more projects under the cut line to move up because it opened up about $2.6 million. And so that's what y'all got last week when I emailed out the minutes and the agenda. And so this is the list of projects in 2.5 that we had wanted to talk a little bit about today before y'all dig into the conversation. And so the biggest differences with the scenario compared to 2.5, we applied the same lenses that we did to scenario 2 because we saw the majority of support for that scenario. So we didn't want to change that up. This would fund 27 projects at $29.9 million. The remaining amount is about $100,000 that's left over. Excuse me. And so this would fund application 49, Lane County completely, compared to in scenario 2 where we did ask them to reduce. This scenario would also add 3 more projects that are funded completely. So this is Washington County, LeGrand, and City of Redmond. We did put the interactive board link here too, if you want to click on 2.5 and be able to look at the difference there as a visual to scenario 2. In scenario 2.5, we also did remove application number 60 to prioritize the smaller projects that I just referenced here. As when we applied the smaller project lens, that's one of the projects that were not included in 2.5. So wanting to highlight that as well. And this is a table that just kind of shows, you know, across the board in hopefully a easy way to digest of the major differences. And so with scenario 1, we didn't apply any lenses. There's, you know, about $1.1 million remaining on the table. Scenario 2 would fund 25 projects with these 2 applied optional lenses. You know, doesn't leave any money on the table. We do ask a project to reduce. And then scenario 2.5, as I just mentioned, 27 projects, same 2 lenses, little over $100,000 left, and we would be able to fully fund all 27 projects. And then scenario 3, 24 projects. The lens that we applied there was that $3 million per jurisdiction lens. And about $895,000 would be left on the table there. So we typically provide a staff recommendation for SRAC to consider as y'all deliberate. We are recommending scenario 2.5 in that it funds the most projects. We don't ask for any of the projects to reduce their proposals, which also helps in minimizing the risk for potential project cancellation, as we've seen, you know, inflation and cost overages be pretty high. We've had discussions about that as an advisory committee in the last year. We know there are other factors that could cause project cancellation, of course, so this doesn't fully eliminate that risk, but it helps that we are not adding to that risk. And it also reflects well the advisory committee's intent for the current definitions of geographic balance and cost-effective lenses, and it's the closest scenario to reflect the homework input that y'all had submitted. Great.
So before we move into this, could we have a period of questions, comments, queries?
Yes. Sharing my screen. And if there are any questions in all of that information I just threw at you. Yes, Rob.
Thanks for taking this now too, because I have to jump to my phone in a minute. I'll have to have my camera turned off, but I just want to understand that the PBOT project 87, did that get dropped from the scenario because it was a higher amount, like 2.2 million? Is that trying to fund more smaller projects? It's not like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, so that's still included in scenario 3. Right. It wasn't included in scenario 2, which is what we had kind of developed scenario 2.5 off of.
Right.
It's
just interesting because it's 2.2 million and that got a score of what, 355, and then there's like projects like this, the Dallas project's 1.93 million with a slower score, and I'm just wondering like how meaningfully different are those? I mean, they're not, the delta on the project cost is pretty small, so maybe you could just speak to that. Sorry, I'll try not to interrupt you.
No, yeah, no, definitely, yeah. I think it's like so when we don't have like a specific definition, right, of like smaller projects, and I think like the best examples we have, you know, in our program guidelines is that, you know, if it's all based on what projects are submitted, right, and so if it is a smaller amount, we look at when we apply the lens to it for smaller projects, and so that was the reason that because they're both under the cut line initially. And so, right, like when we apply the lenses, those are what we're really looking at, those projects under the cut line. And so because City of Portland, the PBOT project was more, that's how we applied the lens. But I get it. That's like, well, what about like the score? But that's, you know, that was how we applied the lens.
So the 2 million, was that the magic number there, that they were over that?
It wasn't the magic number per se, but it was more than the City of Dallas.
A little bit,
that's
not much. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I just feel like, I mean, it's hard with these kinds of things because And I don't know how much you guys look at this when you're scoring, but like, you know, that school serves a lot of kids, I'm presuming. And so like when I look at that, and I know that school district, because I mean, or acknowledging we're not supposed to lobby for projects, maybe I'm breaking the rules here, but like that, I read the news and that school district has been suffering a lot. They've had a lot of issues and I feel bad for them. And so it's just like this, you know, a project for a school like that is going to benefit a huge number of students because it's probably a big school. And so I think about, I mean, I know there's the rural urban balance and all, but I'm just like, gosh, this could be a really meaning, you know, and you look at that street too, and just how busy it looks. I mean, I went into Google Street View. I mean, I tried to look at the rest of the cut line, not the ones you just added in Scenario 2.5 because I just didn't have time, and I try to look at like, what does the street look like there? And so anyway, that's just how I feel. I'm gonna have to switch to my phone now, but yeah, so that, and like, it just didn't seem like, and then like I'll stop there, but
yeah, no, totally. I totally understand that, Rob. Yeah, completely. And I think that's like the challenging piece, right? Is that like, how do we apply that across the board? Because there are all like important safety projects, right? That are all needed. And so I think that like a great conversation in the next round is, do we like more narrowly define like small projects? And is there like a cutoff amount that we want to, you know, include? So I think that's a great conversation for a future round, for when we have projects like this. You know, as Chris mentioned, like this is our 4th solicitation, right? And so I think we have a lot of information to look at of like, what have we funded and what are projects we've not been able to fund, and look at having a robust conversation in 2025 for that.
Let's go to Will and then Matt, please.
Thanks, Neil. One or two notes here. First, I do think it's really important that as we finalize our list of projects, providing really detailed notes to the folks who don't get selected about where they are in scoring. Like, I think it's a really hard thing to hear no, and you want to understand fully why that no is coming. So I think that outreach is going to be really important. To Rob's point, I do have some concerns about just the regional spend that we're doing as a program. And I don't have the numbers for Scenario 2.5. But if we look at our ODOT regions and we look at population, Region 1, which is the Portland metro area, consists of about 43% of the state. And in early funding breakdowns, I think this was Scenario 2, they're getting about 23% of the funds. So a huge disconnect in the population of the state that Region 1 serves versus the funds they're actually getting. And so I think a good lens to look at in a future allocation would be some type of like regional balance where we want to see more equitable fundings between the different regions, because I think there is a lot of need that just is not being addressed in some really dangerous conditions. And so making sure that these dollars are spread more equally throughout the state would be really valuable.
Yeah, I totally agree that we can have that discussion in the next year of like, how do we incorporate some of that regional balance, since right now that's not a part of the lenses for this round. And then we can also reach out to back out to, you know, DOJ, since initially we were informed by them that we actually can't allocate percentages based on regions. And so we can revisit that conversation and see if there's additional and new guidance around that. Thanks,
Matt. Thanks, Sarah. Oh, you're muted, Matt.
There we go. Thank you. My main comment on this aspect of it was really the scoring matrix, and when we before we even apply the lenses, because sometimes I felt when I looked at the actual scores that it's like, well, I'm not sure if the scoring matrix really answers what we wanted to kind of pull out of the score of the projects. And so I think sometimes some projects got rated higher because of just the way we have allocated points versus what we're trying to get out from lenses. And so I would like to have a chance to review the scoring matrix. And then as just a quick comment about, you know, equitable among regions, is that at some point, I'm going to pick on Region 1 because I'm from a rural region, is that at some point, you know, I don't know how soon you'll get to, you know, complete safe streets altogether, but you'll still be receiving, you know, 43% of the funding if you go percentage wise. And that's not right either. So it's a tough, just a sticky, tough thing that we need to look at as a whole. And now is not the time to find the solution to it.
I think well, over the past 4 solicitations, last 3 solicitations, as more need has come up, the scoring matrix is where the SRAC really weighs in, and the lenses. And some of these topics have been visited before in the DOJ decision, but I think there's enough moving forward to definitely review, which is part of the SRAC charge, is to review the lenses and the scoring matrix for the next round. And this also applies to education. So any other questions? Yes, Danny.
I was just gonna note that, so scenario 2.5 does, closely parallels scenario 1, which was the no lenses in terms of the distribution that region 1 got. So that, to me, that seems like, okay, if we're going for a straight score rank, scenario 2.5 is still kind of the most meeting the most kind of fair, right? Because to me, it's like, okay, there's a scoring system, right? And maybe we do need to revisit it in between, but we have the scoring system we have right now. And so, everybody's being evaluated on those terms. And so, as we think through how to distribute, like how the lenses affect that, it does seem like 2.5 is also fair.
Other comments or questions? Okay. Yeah, Mavis. Oh, you're just saying hi?
No, so who got dropped? If we went from scenario 2 to 2.5, who specifically lost out, and how are we going to go to them and say, you know what? We crossed you over because of this. Because because I'm all about 2.5, don't get me wrong. But if we go with 2.5 over 2, what exactly are you going to say to those individuals, and who is losing out?
One of them is voluntary, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. So one was voluntary, but number 60, is that the one?
So that's City of Tigard, that when we applied the lenses, and I know it's a little, so when we applied the lenses with the additional projects that came up from under the cut line, those projects, applied more. I'm trying to explain in a way where I'm like, the process, yeah. So with 60, and I can't remember the amount, but with the smaller projects lens, projects number 68, 96, and 7, those were the ones that we kept after applying that lens.
Those are pulled up from underneath because they were smaller enough.
Because we had the additional $2.6 million when City Eugene rescinded their application number 86.
That's a really big project.
Yeah.
In our scheme.
So if people don't have their pulled up, it's Washington County, City of LeGrand, and City of Redmond are the 3 additional projects that are added to 2.5.
City of Tigard have you had a conversation with City of Tigard already, or is that a TBD? After this?
A conversation of pulling them out of the scenario?
Well, yeah,
we don't have
I suppose it's
until after.
Because I know you have the conversations about like cutting projects. So I was like, I just wasn't sure how the communication
We have
works.
the conversations about potential project reduction.
Right,
and so
right.
if there is, potential funding for just like a partial of the projects, then we reach out to them if they indicated that yes, in their application, they'd be willing to take a partial award. But looking at 2.5 in prioritizing smaller projects, we would prioritize the 3 smaller projects over this project. And so that's, I mean, these are all the right questions to be asking, right, in the deliberation of, you know, which projects to fund over which.
49, is that funded in scenario 2.5?
That is fully funded in,
Okay,
I believe. Right, Chris, am I wrong there? I think that's Lane County.
That is Lynn County now.
Yeah, so we would fully fund all of projects, all the 27 projects in scenario 2.5.
Roberto, could we stop sharing screen so I can see if there are questions? Thank you.
So we gained 3 and we lost 1
In 2.5.
and 2.5.
Yeah.
Okay. And the 2, would that one that we lost have been funded? It would have been funded in scenario 2.
That's, yeah, how it was set.
But how much money would we have left on the table?
In 2.5?
No, in 2.
No money.
No
because there
money
was a
left.
scope reduction. One of them
Yeah.
was a scope reduction.
And so with 2.5, we're leaving a little bit of money on the table, but we are fully funding 3 more instead of 1.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
am I correct? You're fully funding all of them in
We're
2.5.
fully funding all of them, but in comparison to scenario 2, we would actually be fully funding 4 projects because Lane County is has partial funding in scenario 2.
Right.
Any other additional comments or questions?
Chris, I'm having trouble finding my raise hand function. Sorry.
Okay. Just chime
But
in,
it's
Dana.
Dana. I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on. I do have a question though, just about where the city of Redmond came from. I think I was reading the city of Gladstone would have been the next on the list, and they were requesting.
Yeah.
Is that not right?
No, you are correct.
Oh,
You are correct.
okay. I'm seeing, yeah, on the cut line analysis, and they asked for 180,000, and I see that they didn't want to reduce their grant, but it looks like they would only be reducing it by $8,000. I just wanted to clarify that when we asked them that question, they knew it would be by that very small amount. If you added in what was on 2.5 and the amount that the city of Redmond's getting.
Yeah, when we looked at the application analysis, if folks said that they were not willing to take a reduction, then we did not reach out to them asking to say, are you sure? Because it's $8,000. So we did not reach out to them because they said no, they would not be willing to take a reduction.
Oh, okay. Can we make a note to maybe change that policy in the future? I just think people would want to know, or maybe make that clear, make it a certain amount of money that it would be reduced by. I don't know. Coming from a small city, that would be devastating to know we missed out on something by
Because it was $8,000, and I mean, I think in that reduction math, it was like, or the reduction was a yes or no question, but then it allowed you to describe what you could do to reduce. So, you know, like if you were to say, you know, I could, so that seems like I just always say yes, right? Like that's is my general policy, is always say yes and then say like, here's what I can and can't do. And if I don't get a certain threshold, it's like not worth my time to do the construction management's hard.
Yeah. And Dana, I think that's a good point. We can definitely look at like what that could look like. I think a part of the struggle is we don't know by how much, right, that we would be asking them to reduce until we get to the scenarios and getting feedback from the advisory committee. But I think that like we could, I think we can definitely, provide the guidance of like, you might want to say yes, because it could be by $8,000. And if you're telling us no, then we are, looking at, well, then who is saying yes, that they could take a partial funding. So I think that's a great point that we can make for the next round.
Awesome. Yeah, because I think, I mean, if you're still reaching out to people who are saying yes, then it feels like why ask the question anyway if there isn't really a threshold. My guess is they said no because they don't want you to reduce their funding, but that they would probably
Mhm.
take the money. So just thanks.
It's
Yeah, but
hard, but I don't, it's also a thing for Zhao, like administering the program that like, if you have to call everybody and say, can you take a reduction in scope? I mean, it's an ask, right? So there's a good reason for asking the question. And I think people, maybe there should be some, I don't know, I think it'd be a really hard conversation to have at this point to say, this is why you didn't get it, because you said, no, I wouldn't take a reduction, and we would have reduced it by $8,000. Like, that is a really difficult conversation, but it's also maybe a really important one to like understand that, when you're asked this question, think like you have a room to explain what amount of reduction you could handle.
Mhm. Yeah, and they were like under the cut line. And so once the $2.6 million became available after, like after we got input from the homework, that's when we, did the additional conversations of like, hey, like you're down the cut line. Now we're asking you these questions. And so I think, yeah, we would have loved to have done that if there was more time for us to be able to have all of those conversations. But yeah, I think we can also look at, like the application itself in the next round of like, is this a question worth asking? Or if, do we just want to in the future include that analysis for all the applicants of saying like, hey, if we can give you partial funding, we'll just reach out to everybody and look at if that is a feasible option for the program administration and the management side for sure.
Yes, Jessica.
Sorry, I missed a lot of the today, but I also feel like the validity of these projects is not what's in question. We have a defined amount of money, and reading all the applications and all the information, it just feels like there will be a few cuts. We're doing the best that we can, and these projects will be first in line next time.
Is that a lens, right? I mean, because there was something about that in the lens description that was like, yeah, there we go, persistent applicants.
And there's, I think there's clarification on that too, that we'll get to that discussion when there's a review. Before we, are there any other questions before we actually request if there's a recommendation? I want to pause, and Roberto, can you help me to make sure we still have quorum? Because I know some folks needed to step away.
Yeah, we absolutely do. I am counting 12 advisory committee members with us.
Thank you. Okay, could we stop or start screen sharing? And we're going to do a quick review as we do all allocations or recommendation processes about conflict of interest. Thank you. So an action, decision, or recommendation made in an official capacity which causes a private pecuniary benefit or detriment, meaning fiscal benefit or detriment to the public official or your relatives or a business associated with the person or public official or relative. I just want to highlight, there was some concern, my son or daughter goes to the school and I may recommend a scenario that has that school involved. That is not a conflict of interest, because that benefit is not a financial benefit, it's a safety benefit for everyone. And I think there was a concern about if I'm working in a jurisdiction that gets this, I may work on it as part of my overall job. Again, that is not a personal that you're actually, you're still going to have your salary. This is not an actual conflict of financial interest or providing financial interest. So I wanted to just pause here and say, I think one of the benefits of this committee is also folks who are being very transparent on a perceived conflict of interest. So now would be the time to say if you're perceived and to hear about that. Yeah, Danny.
Sure, for me, it was, it felt more like a perceived to note that rather than an actual conflict of interest, because I submitted an application and we are not anywhere near the cut line. So it's just a clarification that I don't believe it is an actual conflict of interest, and it might be perceived as such, but
Thank you for declaring that.
It's not near the cut line, so none of these scenarios changes my status.
Great. Jessica.
Sorry, one of these projects is on my street and it's at the school my child goes to, but I have no financial interest.
Great. Will?
One of these projects is in the city of Milwaukee, where I'm a city councilor. I have no financial interest. It's not anywhere near the top of the list, or it's kind of close, but it's not there. So I'm sad to say I won't have a conflict of interest there.
Okay. All right, could we move to the next slide, please?
I think Rob has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rob. You're on the phone now?
Yeah, I just want to say, yeah, ditto kind of for you working for the city of Eugene. We have a couple of projects where there could be a perceived conflict of interest, but I don't stand to benefit from it financially in any way.
Okay, thank you. All right, so again, using our process to reach consensus, we would like to hear, or if the SREC's ready to make a recommendation for one of the scenarios. If someone could pose it, and then we can use our process, thumbs up, thumbs to the side, or thumbs down. And again, with thumbs down, we'd have more discussion, as well as with thumbs to the side to see what the issues are.
I would like to make a recommendation that let's see if I can get the wording right. That we recommend that the Oregon Transportation Commission approve funding of the Safe Routes to School projects in scenario 2.5. Did I get it? Did I do it right?
You did it perfectly.
Good.
And so now is if there's any discussion about that, well, we don't use, because we're working on consensus, we're not really using Roberts, but is there any questions about that, or are you ready to show your thumb?
I was going to second it.
Oh, well, then I think you can show it by your thumb. Could I see if people could weigh in on where they are with that recommendation? I see yes, 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 yes. Kim? Yes, okay. And Rob? You're on the phone?
He made a little thumbs
Sorry,
up
yeah,
sign.
yeah, I made a little thumbs up. It seems to disappeared
right.
after a few seconds. Sorry.
Okay, so unanimous recommendation for scenario 2.5. And just to follow up, the staff will go ahead and have Will, you're accurate. I think the detailed discussion with applicants that are not part of the recommendation. I also want to say that while there's public comment here at the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee, there's also public comment at the Oregon Transportation Commission as well. So with that, congratulations. Isn't the table beautiful? I think we have a little more SRAC information, so can we start sharing?
Perfect. Wanting to round out today's meeting, with which I'm like, wow, we're at 3:20. We're like ahead of schedule, y'all. Great job. For next year's meeting schedule, I wanted to share a little bit about that. Andrea Durbin had shared a little bit earlier about all of the Public Transportation Division advisory committees wanting to align in terms of meeting cadence. And as we all know, there's a big legislative year ahead of us. And so we wanted to look at meeting at very key points in next year. And so we are proposing that we forego our January SRAC meeting and supplement that with an office hour with Leanne Ferguson. As I think most people here know that I will be on maternity leave. I'm having my baby in January. And so Leanne will be stepping into the interim role and be supporting SRAC. And then we will meet in March. We will send an end of the year survey, a debrief about how 2024 was for you as an SRAC member and things that we can improve upon, things to celebrate. And we will share those at the March meeting, so not to lose any of that debrief information. As with Suzanne, Suzanne mentioned earlier that we'll have more information at the March meeting to be able to share out an update. And then Heidi and I will be sharing a little bit more about the construction and education programmatic goals for 2025. And I think, Matt, this was to your point earlier of, when do we review selection criteria? And so this is when we would introduce that, and looking at like, here's exactly when we would do that at the May and the July meeting. And then meet again in September. We should have all of the updates from the legislative session by then. And so we'll have a little more clarity on what our program looks like moving forward. And then we will meet in November if we need to, and we can look at scheduling that out as we go into the new year. Yes, Matt, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just want to throw this out there. Last year we did have an in-person meeting option. And I like that, getting together and meeting my fellow cohorts on this. Is there still an option for that this coming 2025?
We had talked about, I think, was it our last meeting or back in July? I think we had talked about like we could do a site visit, if and I think Eugene folks had offered to maybe host us. I think Jessica and Rob were saying that they'd be open to that. So we could definitely look at planning in maybe like for one of the meetings, maybe our July meeting could be a site visit. We could definitely look at that. We're trying to align some potential site visits right now around traffic gardens. And so if that works out, we can look at doing that.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
I'd like to request that if we do an in-person one, that we choose a really meaty subject, like when we set the alignments, because I find that it has a lot more really meaningful insight when we're all in person and we can talk on and off screen. So if we do get together, which I fully encourage, I would like it to be for a meeting that is more than just a site visit, but to really hash out some of the things what we're really looking for.
Agreed.
And then by March, we'll be able to meet your baby.
Yeah, I'll bring my baby.
No, I appreciate that, Mavis. I think that would be a really fruitful experience for everyone to be together, talking about the lenses as well as the scoring matrix. Yep. All right, any questions on the meeting schedule? So just to reiterate, no meeting in January, as staff will be pretty much in the thick of a legislative session, as well as doing some research and doing a survey for, as you mentioned, Zhao. And then in March, gathering. In the interim, however, there will be updates. If there's a legislative update, if there's something that we can. And then one thing I think, Leanne, I know you mentioned maybe by December, we'll be able to post office hours.
Oh, the timing?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Roberto. Also in the chat, there were questions about where to find the lists, and those have been posted. Any final comments, Zhao, for the?
No, I just wanted to say a really big thank you. I know it's a lot of work, and our challenge is always not having enough funding. That's always where our limitation is, because we know all of these projects are needed and really important safety projects, and that they are needed throughout the state. And so I really look forward to having really robust, rich conversations in the next year, looking at great, how do we get to fund more projects, and of course hoping, not taking an official stance here, for the legislative session, but like we know that additional funding would go further. So yeah, thank you all so much. It's a lot of work. In the end of the year survey, if there are additional feedback, that y'all would like to provide to staff, like here's how we could streamline like meetings, here's what would be helpful for SRAC members, for you to be able to like help make these decisions or these recommendations for both the education and construction program. We'd love to hear it, and would love to make the meetings better experiences for y'all if that's possible.
So I think we just have a few minutes. If anyone has any final meeting comments or check-ins that they'd like to do.
I think I saw Rob hand and then Danny.
Yeah, Rob.
Hi, sorry, I got my connection wasn't working very well. Well, first of all, congratulations to Zhao, and secondly, so I also serve on the ODOT's Public Transportation Advisory Committee, so that's one of the 4 committees that Suzanne was referencing earlier. That's part of the Public and Active Transit Division, and we created like this in advance of the 2017 legislative session. We created this kind of nice document about kind of the need for more public transportation funding in Oregon. And I know we already have pretty healthy funding for Safe Routes to School, but maybe it needs, we want the support to continue from the legislature. And I wonder if there's been any documents created that sort of showcases all the great projects that have been built so far, and maybe even like talks about the need though, and how we're always so oversubscribed. But I can imagine just like a 4 or 6 page, something with photos interspersed with text could be really nice. I don't know if like your consultant team has the capacity to, the thing is, it's not lobbying, right? It's education. We're just educating the public about the Safe Routes to School successes and the need that's still out there. But I think it would be pretty cool to have something like that. Also, Zhao, I sent you those photos. I don't know if you're able to share any of them, but we just built a project in Eugene that we're proud of on Howard Avenue in the River Road neighborhood. And one thing we used, rather than, it's kind of like a hybrid bike path on the south side of the street, where we use like a prefab curb because it's an unimproved street. And so it would have been a lot more expensive to kind of build a sidewalk or shared use path with curbs, and would have been a lot more impactful to the adjacent properties. So anyway, I know I just said a lot, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, thanks, Rob, and thank you for your special congratulations. I appreciate it. We will work with staff, and I think Rem, maybe we can touch base about like how we can provide some of that information as we go into legislative year. But we do, because we do have like before and after photos, right, that we require of all projects. And so I think we have some information. We have an all of Safe Routes to School project map that's publicly like available. So I think we definitely have information to share, and we can coordinate on how best to share that in like an educational way.
Great.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Hi. I just wanted to share, I have changed jobs. I'm a CTR senior planner now, and we have not entirely decided whether we're going to backfill my transportation planner position. So I may, like, sometime between now and March, we'll probably firm it up, but it's possible that somebody will be taking over in my place before I see y'all again. So if that's the case, I'll try and make sure I'm here for a nice handoff. Just also, if Zhao, if you have an office baby pictures email list, I would like to be on it.
Nice.
Well, I will be sure. Yes, congratulations, Danny. That's exciting, and I will be sure to send one for the March meeting.
Great.
Congratulations, Danny. That's wonderful. Any final comments, questions, queries? Wow, well, well done, SRAC. Number 4. Kudos to everyone. Yay. That's fantastic. And 27 projects, 27 new projects. So I will lob it over to our chair to close the meeting. And our chair might be occupied, so I'm going to lob it now over to Zhao, who the next time we see Zhao will have a different position. Mama.
I'll have a different, completely different identity the next time we see y'all, but have a lovely and safe holiday, however you celebrate. Thank you all so much again for your service to SRAC, your passion for safe route to school throughout the state. And we appreciate and value your time so much. And we will see you all in the new year. So take care, everyone. Be safe.
Happy days. Thanks, everybody.
Congratulations, everybody. Great job.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.